Hello and welcome to this SlimDevOps episode 37. Today I'm joined by Evan. Hello, Evan.
Hello.
Thanks very much for joining us. And this was originally streamed live on twitch.tv/SlimDevOps on April the 1st. Not an April Fool's joke. None of what's about to follow is an April Fool's joke. This is all legit information, I promise. So welcome back. And if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, then do head over to twitch.tv/SlimDevOps and give us a follow there so you can join in these sessions interactively. So, Evan, it's been a few weeks since we've had you on. You're becoming one of the regulars over here.
I guess so. Yes, I'm happy to be back on. Thank you for welcoming me again. And yeah, excited to chat today and share what I've been working on with everybody.
I'm very interested and excited to get into this. But before we get into that, what have you been up to since you were last here with us?
Sure. Yeah, actually, just this past weekend. I'm based out of the United States, and I was, if anybody has ever been to New Mexico before, there is a national park there called the White Sands National Park. It is literally otherworldly, so I did a Saturday trip there. I want to say that NASA, or I'm not sure who was responsible for working on the rovers that went on Mars, but they used the gypsum sand fields there to kind of test and do their initial testing before deploying to Mars. So wow. Super interesting environment to go, and definitely recommend checking it out if you ever have the chance.
Well, your description of otherworldly must be very apt if it has in fact been used for testing other world intended watercraft in this case.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, amazing. I can't really follow that. I've been recording some audio for work. We're producing some videos at the moment, so I've been recording some audio, which has been fun for me because not done any podcasting for a long time, so it was fun to get all the gear out and do that. So that'll be something to look forward to. And I'll also welcome back some of our friends. So hello Big Pod, who's one of our colleagues who's in the chat, and also our podcast. Hello there, our podcast, Eric. Welcome back. So it was big news yesterday at the Docker Community All Hands, and there's two announcements that we're interested in, and I'm going to go first. But the first announcement was that Docker have released Docker Desktop for Linux. And I'm giddy with excitement about this because I feel like a first-class citizen again. So yes. If I just bring up my screen here, you can see here, oops, am I on the wrong page? Here, well, I've gone on the wrong place. That's annoying. No, I'm in the right spot. Here we go. So here's the information. It's changed my dark mode for some reason. I don't know why. So here's the information on how you can install Docker Desktop for Linux. It's intended for Debian and Ubuntu-based distributions at the moment. Have you had a go at installing it yet, Evan?
I would say I had a go. I wouldn't consider it a successful go, but I certainly tried.
Yes, it's interesting. So I do have it installed, and as best as I can tell, it's going to work. But there are some interesting properties about Docker Desktop for Linux, because what we have had on Linux, of course, since forever is the Docker engine. And I just assumed that, the Docker Desktop would talk to the Docker engine directly on Linux. That was just my naive assumption. But in fact, what they've actually done is, in order to ensure the experience is the same for Linux users as it is on Mac OS and Windows users, it actually sets up a VM and it puts all of the tooling inside the VM again, so they can control that environment completely. It doesn't matter if you're sticking on LTS releases of Ubuntu or stable releases of Debian, they're able to roll the kernel and the kernel features forward inside that VM that they're running the containers inside, so they can, well, first of all, harden the VM and the container security model, but also ensure that everybody gets the same experience on every platform. So yeah, it's a little bit different, and the main reason that I don't have it fully set up yet is they've made an interesting choice in how they're handling the password management facility. So as somebody who has a lot of experience with desktop Linux, the way they've gone about it is unorthodox. It's not wrong, but it's just unorthodox. And you have to use the password manager in order to create a key store for credentials. And there are facilities on the Linux desktop to do this in a more sort of, let's say, native way.
Sure, yeah.
So I haven't jumped through that because I needed to actually, when it's got this link, say, learn how to do that here. And when you click the link, it opens the man page. And it's like, yeah. Oh, okay. A little bit of research and reading required. So over the weekend, I'll probably get that set up. But my initial thoughts are, I can't wait to have a play with this and actually start using this. I'm really looking forward to it. And of course, this sort of segues with the second announcement that they had, which is the one of the reasons for making sure that's a consistent experience by using VMs, is because they want the Linux users to be able to use Docker Desktop Extensions, which was the other announcement from yesterday. And I know that you've got direct experience with this because SlimAI are a Docker Desktop Extension partner, and we've been working on this for some months now. So what can you tell us? What are Docker Desktop Extensions, and sort of what have we been doing?
Sure, yeah. So Docker Desktop Extensions, I think we can expect to see sort of an involvement of a marketplace over time here. Right now, it is, from the SlimAI experience at least, if you're familiar with our portal, we offer a variety of functionalities via a web application, and how we are kind of fitting into the Docker Desktop Extension ecosystem is working on bringing a subset of what we currently offer on our portal into the native desktop experience. And for anybody that writes code, you know, this is about tightening the dev loop, right? So you're always going to have to go out to Google, right? Let me figure stuff out on the internet. That's just how development works, at least web development for me personally. But for local container-based development on top of Docker in particular, this is a nice step up in my eyes, at least. Mm-hmm. I've been having a lot of fun working on both our front end of the extension. I've been pairing mostly with one of our architects. He's been leading the back-end development. And yeah, we've been hard at work shipping code, and really looking forward to getting this out in the hands of more users later on, and hoping that it will really create a lot more value to trying to, like, building software is hard. You know, it just is. It's fun and it's challenging, but to reduce friction, I think that is one of our idioms here at Slim.AI. But it really is the point. You know, you want to just ship, you know, you build the castles in your mind on your team, and you want that to just go out as quickly as possible, as seamlessly as possible, and then to iterate. And we're really, I don't know, I'm very hopeful that this Docker Desktop Extension, both for what we're working on and what other companies and teams will bring forth to the marketplace, I think it's going to be a good shift forward for container-based development.
Yeah, certainly what you mentioned there about sort of, you know, developer experience and reducing developer friction, that is something we're very keen on here, and it was a central story to sort of why Docker Desktop Extensions have been created, in order to help developers consolidate their tooling around container development, construction, composition, and in some cases deployment, you know, around one set of tooling, by pulling in all the very best of what, you know, the container technology community has created. Hey, hello Pete and Takov, thanks for stopping by. And it is also worth pointing out that we are partners here creating an extension among a handful of others. So we do have early access to these APIs and the platforms in order to develop that. But what we're discussing here, Docker Desktop Extensions, won't be released to the public until May this year, when Docker will unveil a new version of Docker Desktop with the extensions rolled out as a beta feature. And at that point, I think everyone can have a play. And I think at that point, they're opening up the API so that community contributors can create their own extensions as well. So how have you found the process? I mean, what have we built so far, and how's that gone?
Sure, I'll address the first part there, the process, right? So this is early, this is beta stage. If anybody has ever dealt with beta APIs, alpha APIs, when you get in early, it is both very exciting, right? You know, wow, first here, very fun. But it's also the challenges you'll face. You know, there's no Stack Overflow posts about any of the issues
Right.
that we run into. Like that's not a thing. So you lose, as the kind of what the modern development experience can be, you lose some of the elements of that, and that's okay. But it does add, you know, this new set of challenges to development. And there are, I guess, when you wear the hat of I expect this to be harder, I don't think I can't assume, I can't make all the typical assumptions I could make about stable API, right? You just can't do that. Everything is kind of shifting under your feet.
Right.
But this is also still, this just builds into the excitement, right? I think the Docker team, the engineering team, and both the design team and the product management, they've done a stellar job of communicating and iterating and really, I don't want to say holding the hand, but helping at least our team move forward with when we would get stuck. And we have a lot of questions, right? No Stack Overflow. So you just like, hi people building the stuff, please help me. So I've really had a good time doing that thus far. And I have a lot of respect and appreciation for what they've done. And I'm happy to just keep receiving and building on top of it.
So what? Go on.
Go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting. Carry on.
Okay. I was going to say, in terms of what I have really been working on over the past many weeks and weeks now, truthfully not even sure of the timeline, but really trying to build our initial, you know, MVP, our version of same thing. We want to now push out our very first release of this, right? And my first experience with this application is I've never built an Electron app. So that is the sandbox that we're working in. And as somebody who doesn't have a background there, this is once again like, ooh, another layer of excitement. Not only am I working on top of beta APIs, but I'm also working in a kind of a new context from a development experience. So that's a really great learning opportunity for myself and for my other teammates as well.
And that actually sort of echoes back to what we were just talking about earlier. You know, I was talking about my excitement at having Docker Desktop for Linux available, and within the desktop Linux community, Electron still doesn't have a great reputation among a lot of people, but I absolutely love Electron because over the last 5 years, it has been an amazing leveler. Because, you know, right now, I'm using OBS to do this, and the only reason that we can integrate all these cameras and what have you and do this remotely is because it's got Ceph embedded inside OBS, which is Chromium Embedded Frameworks, which is the forerunner to Electron. So this ability to cram browsers inside, you know, application frameworks is extraordinarily powerful. And then, you know, we're doing all of this, you know, we're running Discord, that's an Electron application. And then more importantly, things like, you know, Visual Studio Code and Atom before it and Git Kraken. I've mentioned a bunch of developer tools, but so much of what's being developed on Electron for, you know, the major platforms has come to Linux because it's cheap or inexpensive to actually go, oh, well, let's make a Linux version as well. And for a brief while, I was involved in the Electron Maintainers Summit, you know, to sort of, you know, bootstrap those early days of Electron for Linux users, which I got a lot of stick for from Linux users around the world, but I totally believed in it. Now, I think there's a competing platform coming today, but I love Electron. I love how it's helped turn my Linux workstation you know, experience into something that represents what you can do on Mac OS and Windows today.
Yeah, yeah, and that really, I love that. I didn't know that you were involved with the early days of Electron. So that is
Yeah.
very exciting too. Yeah.
So you're learning Electron, and how have you found, other than the shifting sands beneath you, how have you found the sort of the development experience with working with Electron itself?
I found it pretty approachable, I would say. The type of application and what sort of experience we have been delivering thus far hasn't really run into any boundaries, right? So there are certain behaviors when you are working in a native browser as opposed to an Electron app that you will behave differently. For example, href opening in a new tab, that's not a thing in Electron. I tested this the other day. I was curious what would happen. It didn't do anything. It was nice, or not nice, but it was good to know. It's good to know,
Yeah.
right? This is how you learn. And yeah, it really does feel just like building directly on the browser for my experience thus far. There are those little edge cases. Another question that I haven't answered yet is, I want to perform a download, right? How do I do that? I'm sure I can. I guess I would assume that I can, but I don't know. I would presume, based on my open a new tab behavior being different, that the download behavior might be different. So you're always throwing these questions up in the air that you do also, like when you're originally learning web development, you ask these questions. Can I do this in a browser, right? Like, I don't know, what's the difference between like running Node in the CLI, and what can I do there versus doing that in the browser? There are always differences when you move across, I guess, delivery platforms or experience platforms. I'm not really sure what word to use there. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And it does, like, my last experience with Electron was 4 years ago. So I feel that my exposure there, just building, I'm not even sure what I did, just maybe a weekend, let me do a to-do shopping list app or something, something silly.
Surely it must have been a chat application, because every Electron application is a chat application.
Yes, it might have been. It might have been.
So when we had you on stream last, you were helping Pete and I up our game with Nuxt.js and Vuetify, which is toolkits we use for developing the Slim SaaS platform. So have you been able to use that same tooling as you've been working on sort of, the Electron integration of our stuff?
Yeah, so I have. And actually, I would say, to speak to the challenges of that implementation, for the most part, I've been able to kind of just plug and play a lot of my components and system architecture from my kind of primary web portal built in using these tools. They've really transposed pretty well. Porting is the word I've been using. Porting a web application into this Electron sandbox and seeing what breaks literally every day. And for the most part, it's been pretty seamless. There are some edges, but this is just the nature of, if you have a sufficiently complex web UI in particular, is really where I've been operating. There's going to be a lot of assumptions and dependencies that as soon as you enter, say, an Electron sandbox, when this was initially built to be shipped onto, typically I would test in a Chrome browser, for example.
Right.
Those assumptions will break. They will fail. And I don't know if we will see them today, but there are certain edges where I just haven't resolved them yet. Dependency is not quite coming through, but for the most part, it's been very reliable. So I know we are using Material UI, I believe is the name of the kit, and it plays very nicely, very, very nicely inside of this sandbox. And yeah, I'm very happy about that. Initially, I wasn't really sure. We have all of this, thousands or tens of thousands of hours of work put into our primary portal, and it would really be unfortunate to not be able to reuse as much of it as possible, really, within the Docker Desktop extension piece. If the goal is to just ship value to users, I don't want to have to build everything from scratch. Like I want to be able to take 99.999% of the already done work and deliver that, yesterday.
Yeah, it would be hugely ironic if Docker Desktop extensions are there to relieve developer friction, only to place friction upon developers creating desktop extensions.
Yeah, and I think that the platform they provided and the communication that they provide the teams thus far working it's been a great starting point. I really, this is a stellar experience. It's fun to work on too. It's not. It's still coding, so it's challenging, but if it wasn't challenging, I'd be bored. So right. I'm very grateful for the challenge.
So I think earlier in that explanation of how you found the experience, you said as you'll see today. So does that mean you're able to give us a little sort of sneak peek at what you've been working on?
Yes, I would love to share.
Okay, let's have a little look then. So
right.
what are we looking at here?
Sure. So this is basically the very, very first version of the Slim.AI extension inside of Docker Desktop. So I'm on a Windows machine. So this is how kind of the default dark mode, of course, because that is just my personal taste. But
well, it's the only mode.
Yes. They do support light mode though. So they will, the Docker Desktop will respect your kind of default setting. Like I said, I am dark mode. So that is what we have today. And these images these cards really, they're reflecting the images that I have on my local machine. So if I was to run Docker images, this is
right.
effectively the list that you would see. You could look at these little ones, like that looks like a bug, right? Very interesting, and it is. So something that I will have to address. That's the nature of my role. But outside of that, this is kind of the initial port of some of the core functionalities that we offer from the portal. So if you've used our portal before, if you've used X-Ray, or if you've used Compare, you can either, let's just take a look now. So this Slim.AI DD extension 1.0, this is actually the container that is being run right here, quite simply.
Right.
And if I was to click Analyze, and it's this little green bar, and I do need to address the accessibility issues with that. That is a design element that I have not yet resolved, so we will be extending that experience. This green bar simply highlights that this image has already been X-rayed. So we kick off the X-ray in the background. So, I can boot up Docker Desktop, I can download this extension, I can pull an image locally, and I don't have to come here and click Analyze and potentially wait for the operation to complete. I could, I can, like whenever I would want to, but for the sake of just getting insight into containers without necessarily having to wait for that insight after performing some manual action, this is like a better flow. There's less work on the hand or the head of the developer, I should say.
I mean, to my eye, this does look exactly like the SaaS platform as well.
Yes, yeah. It is missing a couple of pieces, and that is simply the nature of when you perform a port of this size. Like I said, when you perform a port of this size, there are some assumptions that fail. So I still need to really put in some more laps around the block there. But yeah, we really are near parity. The engine produces what, it really looks the same. You could note there's some little differences here, such as we have a pull by tag, but we don't have the pull by digest.
Right.
And this image is only local, as opposed to if we were to look at, say, an Alpine latest coming from the public Docker hub, and we clicked Analyze, and we looked at the overview, we would see that there is a pull by digest. So this is actually something that I learned in the process of working on this application. This digest, when you're just doing your local development, you're never going to have it. This is coined by, and I don't know where in Docker Hub's stack it's coined, but they're effectively the ones responsible for stamping this image with that digest at some point in the flow of a container ends up on the registry, and then me as the puller, as the Docker Hub or Docker pull of Alpine latest, I end up with this image. So that was kind of a neat learning experience. So when you get to build these extensions, right? So other people coming in and working to create their own extensions later on, you'll really get introduced to a lot of new primitive concepts, which is just exciting as a dev. More learning every day. It's why we're here.
This is fantastic. So you are able to analyze and compare. So analyze is the process of basically introspecting the container to get you a whole bunch of additional insight into what does the layer construction look like, what's the differential between each of the layers, and all of that sort of stuff. Sort of insight into containers that's hard to come by unless you're using Docker Slim. Using SlimAI. And then the other piece you have there is compare, which is to effectively look at the delta between two revisions of a container image.
Exactly, yeah. So we can pick, there's kind of two different modes of compare right now. So we have, let's see if this has multiple tags. It does. So the primary, from a dev perspective, the one that's the most interesting to me, being the one building this container-based application, I have some, even this, what we're looking at right now, is an older version of the work that I've been doing. So I can take, let's say, 1.0 and compare it to any of these other versions. And granted, actually, I'm not sure which of these would have a diff, so we will see, or have a delta rather. But I select my base image and the tag, so SlimAI at 1.0.0, and let's compare it to local. Let's see what happens here. Let's see if there is a delta.
Okay.
There is. Okay.
Oh, wow. It's quite significant. It's a different base OS.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is really neat too, because if you are building extensions and you want to see how extensions are built, this is a way of, you can look at containers, and you can do this for your own. Like I said, I'm doing this for my own containers. You can do this for other extension containers as well. So it's a powerful tool, especially if you are going to become an extension developer. This is, yeah, I'm very excited to see what sort of use cases I can find for myself, as well as for other engineers.
Yeah.
And this still has kind of near parity with the portal as well. You might notice that we're missing two of the tabs. If you're familiar with the compare experience there, those two things are still in flight on my end, the unified diff and the file diff, I believe we call it, file explorer diff. So those two are still coming along. But for now, we still have image metadata diff, which, like we say, we can look at the difference between the base OS. Kind of useful, right? Which one do we want to ship? One that's what size? 84 or 165? You know, big spread there.
Yeah.
Also, looking at all the different labels, you can really gain a lot of insight here. And it's just tightening the loop, right? Like, I can build this container. Is this the container? Which one of these do I want to release to prod? Local or 1.0.0? This diff, and maybe we add future insights that helps me figure out, is this image ready to be released as an extension? Have I ticked the boxes that I need to tick in order to qualify in the marketplace?
Yeah.
And these are sorts of things that can be pretty readily added to this sort of experience. And if you check all your boxes, then you're good to go. Tell your team, let's ship it, right?
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that bit of insight. And I can see people have joined us since we started talking about this, so we should reiterate. SlimAI, part of the partner program for developing Docker desktop extensions. And what we're showing here is the work that you've been doing so far that was part of the announcement yesterday. But our extension and others like it won't be available to the general public until May, when Docker Desktop will feature extensions as a beta release at their DockerCon event later this year in May. So you unfortunately you can't access this stuff now, so we're kind of showing you what you could have won. But it's not too many weeks from now where our extension and lots of other interesting developer tools as well will also be coming to Docker Desktop. So we're talking there about your experiences. You've obviously got, a hotline to the team at Docker who are building the platform that you're building on top of. But if you sort of think of, your weekend project in Electron that you talked about earlier, how do you think sort of community developers are going to fare come the day when they can, start to grapple with this?
I think they'll fare very well. They, if you're UI dev, full stack dev, backend dev, the initial documentation that I was provided has been sufficient from an on-ramping perspective. And, I'm just your average dev, right? Like anybody, if I can figure this out, you can figure it out, sort of thing, right? You just you show up to it, you run through the docs, and you just keep iterating. And I don't know, I'm very excited to see what people make, right? Like, because it is such, and I'm hoping that as you make stuff, you'll post on Stack Overflow, so when I Google, I can learn from you, right? And I will do the same. You know, this is an opportunity for all of us to share together. So yeah, I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I'm going to put words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe this is a unique experience for you where you've literally been, you know, in at the ground level. So your Stack Overflow posts, should you make any right now, are going to be instrumental in helping, you know, the next wave of developers on this platform, because like you say, that dev community doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, exactly. This is very true. And I do hope to share, you know, my learnings. I'm sure my architect will have quite a few as well. And these are invaluable, right? If the intent is to speed up all the devs doing this type of work, yeah, the more we share, and just the quality of what we share, and then fostering a discussion around it too. Hopefully by coming on here today, this will inspire some folks to keep an ear out for when this does release to the public, and then you can go and build your own stuff on the weekend. It's fun, you know, why not? There's nothing stopping you once this gate has passed, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like that. Well, for me, just having the Docker engine available on Linux is obviously, it's been significant for, you know, modern development over the last 9 years. You know, the trajectory of Docker has been impressive, and I think they've chosen the right path with sort of taking Docker down the direction as a developer first tool. I think, you know, that is clearly where it's won hearts and minds, you know, more than anywhere else. And this extensions program is a great expression of the value of Docker for, you know, contemporary development. But having Docker Desktop on Linux, I now feel that I've got the 3 tools that I need on Linux that I was missing, you know, 33% of before, to actually sort of supercharge my local development environments as well, because the Docker engine's fab, but it misses such a lot of what Windows and Mac OS users have available when they're, you know, working with Docker locally. So I'm the next time I'm streaming, I will be fully up to speed. I will have overcome my it getting started, and I'll be sharing my experiences of using Docker Desktop for Linux with, you know, my little community of friends who are sort of, you know, keen Linux users, because I think this is going to be a significant change, a sort of step change in functionality for, you know, how we use Docker on the desktop. I'm very looking forward to getting stuck in with it. Yeah, I see Big Pod's here. What Big Pod? What have you had a play with Docker Desktop for Linux yet? Let me know in the chat if you've had a tinker with it. And while we're waiting for that, I mean, yeah, how many different OSs are you running, Evan?
Overall?
Well, yeah, why not? Why not overall?
How many am I running? That is a very good question. Probably, if we're not talking virtual, right? Because that's kind of, I don't want to even think about that number. If we're just talking hardware that I own and operate, probably six, I would say. Not too many.
Okay. But so you're running a little bit of everything then?
Yeah, I'm a tinkerer, so I like to play. I don't tend to take things to their fullest extent. Like I said, I attempted the Docker Desktop install on Linux, but then I ran into some weird issues, and, you know, I just can stop because I have this machine, so I can switch. This is a Windows machine, as I said. So yeah, having lots of machines makes it simpler when you get blocked to just ignore the block and move on. Yeah. I do want to come back to it. I need to come back to it, actually. So I'm very happy to hear that your experience is going well with the Linux Docker Desktop setup thus far.
Yeah, I'll share my experiences, but I think I'm fortunate in that I happened to upgrade to the latest beta of Ubuntu, and it looks like they're targeting like current versions of Ubuntu. So if you were using anything, if you're using like the last interim release or the current beta release, I think you're on the happy path. But I think if you're using the last LTS, I think you might have troubled waters there. And I'll circle back to that on another machine, because the other thing about Docker Desktop for Linux is it's not designed to run inside a VM. So if you set up a VM of Linux, because of the way that VM privileges work and nested VMs work, it's deliberately designed not to work as a nested VM inside a VM. So you have to run it on the host directly. So I will have to remember where my laptop is stored, because I've not used it for like 2 years, and install it on there.
A good test for sure.
Well, thank you very much, Evan. If anyone's got any questions about Docker Desktop Extensions or Docker Desktop for Linux, then by all means, above my head is our URL. Join our Discord or Discourse. Ask your questions there. Evan and I, or anyone else on the team, will be happy to field any questions you've got about that, particularly about what we're working on and where we're going to go next. In fact, we didn't really touch on that, but I imagine that we'll be unlocking more of the Slim SaaS platform capability inside the extension as well as we move forward.
Yes, as well as some pieces that are going to be probably unique to the local experience, because it's different from working in a web portal. So there will be some standalone elements there. I anticipate, right? I can't tell the future, but
I think that hints at maybe stuff, and I fully anticipate that probably before and around the time of DockerCon 22, we'll have you and maybe Joe on as well to have another round at this and look at where we've got to since this conversation today.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Evan. I found that particularly interesting, hearing about your experiences in working with that new platform. I think that's really insightful stuff. And I hope that other developers will get some value from that when we put this up on YouTube for everyone else to have a look at after the fact. So thanks very much for joining today. Thank you to our friends who've stopped by in chat to listen to all of this. I hope you found that interesting. But I think we will wrap it up there. So thanks very much, and we'll be back next Thursday. And we haven't decided what it's going to be yet. It could be one or two things. So watch this space, and we'll be back next week with something fresh. So thank you very much. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Bye for now.